Think about the last time you felt anxious, uncertain, or overwhelmed. What was happening at that moment? Chances are it was not an actual event, but rather the thought of something that could happen. Maybe your mind was replaying a past mistake, imagining a future failure, or whispering doubts about your ability to handle a challenge. That voice inside your head, the one constantly narrating your life, judging your actions, and pulling you into cycles of worry and self-doubt. What if that voice is not really you? Today, you are about to discover something that has the power to transform the way you see yourself. What if I told you that the inner voice you have been listening to for years, the voice of fear, criticism, hesitation, is nothing more than a conditioned response? What if your deepest struggles are not coming from who you are, but rather from who you think you are? And most importantly, by the end of this journey, you will uncover the single most powerful realization that can set you free from the grip of this illusion once and for all. Take a moment. Listen. There is a voice in your head speaking right now. Maybe it is reacting to what you are hearing, analyzing, or questioning. But here is the most important question. Who is listening? This is a question that has fascinated great thinkers throughout history. The ancient Stoics, Buddhist monks, modern psychologists, all have explored the strange reality of human consciousness. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But what does this truly mean? The mind is like a river, always moving, always flowing with thoughts, emotions, and impulses. But just as the river is not the observer of its own waters, your thoughts are not the observer of themselves. You are the observer. Your thoughts come and go, but something within you remains unchanged, something deeper than any passing emotion or belief. But most people do not realize this. They spend their lives completely identified with their thoughts, mistaking the voice in their head for their true self. This is why a single negative thought can ruin someone's entire day. If your mind tells you, "I am not good enough," and you believe it, that thought shapes your emotions, your confidence, and even your actions. If your mind says, "I am going to fail," and you accept it as truth, you start acting in ways that reinforce that belief. This phenomenon has a name in psychology: cognitive fusion. It happens when we become so entangled with our thoughts that we lose the ability to see them as separate from who we are. Dr. Stephen C. Hayes, the founder of acceptance and commitment therapy, explains that the more we fuse with our thoughts, the more they dictate our emotions, behaviors, and entire perception of reality. But here is the good news. Just as we can fuse with our thoughts, we can also defuse from them. And this changes everything. Consider this. If you were sitting in a room and a radio started playing negative messages, telling you that you are not smart enough, not successful enough, not good enough, would you believe it? Would you assume that because the radio is saying these things, they must be true? Of course not. You would recognize that it is just noise. And yet, when our own minds play these messages, we accept them without question. This is because the mind is like a machine, constantly processing and generating thoughts. Many of these thoughts are not even original. They are echoes of past experiences, voices of parents, teachers, or societal expectations. Some are fears passed down from generations. Others are simply automatic patterns created by the brain's need to predict and protect. But here is the secret. Just because a thought appears does not mean it is true. A Zen proverb states, "You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." This means that you do not need to eliminate thoughts to be free. You only need to stop identifying with them. Freedom is not the absence of mental noise. It is the ability to see it for what it is. So here is something to reflect on. If you are not your thoughts, then who are you? If you can hear the voice in your head, then who is listening? This is the key to unlocking a deeper truth about yourself, one that most people never realize. And this is just the beginning. In the next section, we will explore where this inner voice comes from, how it was shaped, and the surprising truth about its origins. The answer will challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself. But for now, pause. Observe your thoughts. Who is watching them? Think back to when you were a child, before the expectations, before the fears, before the voice in your head became so loud. Do you remember a time when you simply were, without questioning yourself, without second-guessing your every move? That is because at that stage, your mind had not yet been conditioned by the world around you. But as we grow, something happens. The world starts shaping us. Parents, teachers, friends, society, all of them contribute to the voice that now speaks in your head. A child who is constantly criticized may grow up with an inner voice that says, "I am not good enough." A child who is told to always be careful may develop a voice that constantly warns, "Do not take risks, it is not safe." These voices start as external messages, but over time they become internalized, blending into our thoughts so seamlessly that we mistake them for our own. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, described this process as the formation of the superego, the internalized voice of authority that dictates what is acceptable and what is not. It is the voice that keeps you in check, enforcing societal rules and personal limitations. But here is the problem. While this voice can serve a purpose in keeping us functional in society, it can also become a prison. It can keep us trapped in cycles of self-doubt, perfectionism, and fear of failure. Carl Jung, another great psychologist, took this idea further. He believed that within each person exists both a persona, the mask we wear for the world, and a shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress. The inner voice often works to maintain the persona while suppressing the shadow. It tells us what we should and should not do, who we should and should not be. It makes us fearful of stepping outside the lines, of embracing our full potential, because doing so might disrupt the carefully crafted identity we have built. But what happens when you challenge this voice? When you begin to recognize it, not as your truth, but as conditioning? Consider this. If a parrot has been trained to repeat negative phrases, does that mean the parrot believes those words? No. It is simply repeating what it has been taught. And yet we often treat our own thoughts as absolute truths, even though many of them are nothing more than echoes of past experiences. The neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza explains that the brain is like a record of the past. The thoughts you think most often create neural pathways, strengthening those patterns over time. This is why someone who has spent years thinking negative thoughts will find it difficult to break free. Their brain has been wired to default to those patterns. But the good news, just as the brain can be conditioned into limitation, it can also be reconditioned for freedom. This is where awareness becomes your greatest power. When you start to observe your thoughts instead of automatically believing them, something incredible happens. You create space between the voice and your true self. That space is the beginning of freedom, because in that space, you realize something profound. If you can see the thought, then you are not the thought. If you can hear the voice, then you are not the voice. Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now, calls this realization the awakening of consciousness. He explains that most people live their entire lives as if they are trapped inside their minds, never questioning the constant stream of thoughts that dictate their reality. But the moment you witness the mind instead of identifying with it, you step into a deeper awareness, one that is beyond thought, beyond conditioning, beyond fear. Now think about how this applies to your life. How many of your daily struggles, anxieties, and fears are actually coming from reality? And how many are simply coming from the voice in your head? How often do you stop yourself from taking action because of an imagined outcome that has not even happened? How much of your stress is created by thoughts about the future or the past, things that are not even real in the present moment? Here is a challenge for you. Over the next 24 hours, start paying attention to your inner dialogue. Notice the words, the tone, the patterns. Do not try to change them. Just observe. You may be surprised by what you find. You may realize that much of what your mind tells you is not helpful, not necessary, and most importantly, not you. But if you are not the voice in your head, then who are you? If your thoughts are just conditioned responses, then what lies beyond them? In the next section, we will go even deeper. You will learn a powerful technique to detach from the voice in your head, to step into a higher level of awareness, and to reclaim your true self. The answer to this question, the one that could change everything, awaits. You have spent your entire life listening to that voice inside your head. It has been there for as long as you can remember, shaping your decisions, influencing your emotions, and even dictating how you see yourself. But now you're beginning to see something different. You are beginning to realize that this voice is not your true self. It is a conditioned response, a collection of past influences, fears, and societal expectations masquerading as your identity. So now the question becomes, how do you break free from it? The first step is awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Most people go through life unaware of their own mental patterns, reacting impulsively to whatever thoughts arise. But the moment you step back and observe, everything shifts. Instead of being lost in your thoughts, you become the observer of them. And when you observe without attachment, the power they once held over you begins to weaken. Think of it like watching a storm through a window. If you are caught in the storm, it feels chaotic, overwhelming. But the moment you take a step back and watch from a distance, you realize that the storm is not you. It is just passing through. This is why meditation has been practiced for thousands of years by spiritual seekers, philosophers, and even modern neuroscientists. Meditation is not about silencing the mind, it is about seeing it clearly. When you sit in stillness and simply watch your thoughts come and go, you start to understand something profound. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they arise. The renowned spiritual teacher Ram Dass once said, "The mind is like a crazy monkey, jumping from branch to branch. But the moment you stop chasing it, you realize you are not the monkey." But awareness alone is not enough. You must also learn to disidentify from the voice. Disidentification means realizing on a deep level that your thoughts have no power over you unless you choose to believe them. Just because your mind says something does not make it true. The mind will tell you that you are not good enough, not capable, not worthy. But those are just old recordings, echoes of past conditioning. When you stop reacting and start questioning, those illusions begin to dissolve. Here is an exercise. The next time a negative thought arises, instead of believing it, ask yourself, who is thinking this thought? If you can hear the thought, then clearly you are not it. You are something deeper, something beyond. And the more you practice this, the more the inner voice loses its grip. But what happens when the mind resists? What happens when the voice tries to pull you back into its old patterns? This is where most people struggle. The mind does not like to lose control. It will fight to keep its position as the dominant force in your life. It will try to convince you that it is you, that its fears are real, that its limitations are absolute. But here is the truth. The mind is not your enemy. It is just a tool. And like any tool, it works best when you are the one in control. Psychologists have studied a technique called cognitive diffusion, which is the practice of distancing yourself from your thoughts rather than getting caught up in them. One powerful method is to label your thoughts instead of identifying with them. For example, instead of saying, "I am not good enough," say, "My mind is having the thought that I am not good enough." Do you see the difference? The first statement is an identity. The second is just an observation. And when you start seeing your thoughts as passing mental events rather than absolute truths, their hold on you weakens. The philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti once said, "The highest form of human intelligence is the ability to observe without judgment." This is the key. When you watch your mind without reacting, without judging, without believing every word it says, you reclaim your power. Now you may be wondering, if I am not my thoughts, then who am I? This is where the real transformation begins. Because beyond the voice in your head, beyond the conditioned mind, there is something deeper, something untouched by fear, doubt, or limitation. It is the awareness that has been watching all along. It is the presence that exists beneath all the noise. Some call it the true self, others call it pure consciousness. But no matter what name you give it, the experience is the same. When you stop identifying with the mind, you feel a deep sense of peace, clarity, and freedom. You realize that nothing external can define you because your essence is beyond thought, beyond form. In the final part of this journey, we will uncover the most powerful truth of all, the realization that once you stop believing in the inner voice, you become limitless. You will see how to step fully into your true nature, no longer controlled by old patterns, but free to create, to live, to be. The answer awaits. You have come this far. You have begun to question the voice in your head, to observe it, to separate yourself from it. And now you are on the edge of the most powerful realization of all, the one that can change everything. If the voice inside your mind is not truly you, then what is left? If the thoughts that have dictated your fears, your doubts, and your limitations are just echoes of conditioning, then who are you when you let them go? This is where most people hesitate, because the moment you stop defining yourself by your thoughts, something terrifying and exhilarating happens. You enter the unknown. For your entire life, your sense of identity has been built around the stories your mind tells. The roles you play, the fears you carry, the beliefs you hold, all of these have shaped your perception of yourself. But when you realize that none of it is truly you, a space opens up, a silence beneath the noise, a stillness beneath the chaos. And in that space there is infinite possibility. Think about it. If you are no longer controlled by the inner voice that has dictated your every move, then what else is possible? If you are no longer bound by the fears and limitations of the mind, what could you become? This is not just a philosophical question. It is the key to true freedom. The great mystic Rumi once said, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" The reason most people feel trapped is not because the world is against them. It is because their own minds are keeping them small. They have spent so long listening to the voice of doubt, the voice of fear, the voice of limitation, that they have forgotten their true nature. They have forgotten that beneath all of it, they are already free. So how do you step into this freedom? How do you live beyond the mind's illusion? The answer is simple, but not always easy. You stop believing in the story. Every limitation you think you have is just a story your mind has repeated so many times that it feels real. I am not good enough. I cannot change. I am too old, too young, too broken, too lost. But none of these are truths. They are just thoughts. And thoughts only have power when you believe in them. What happens when you stop? When you stop believing in your limitations, you become limitless. When you stop identifying with fear, you become fearless. When you stop attaching to the voice in your head, you discover the vast, boundless presence that has been with you all along. This is why great thinkers, spiritual teachers, and philosophers throughout history have spoken of the same truth in different ways. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese sage, said, "When I let go of who I am, I become what I might be." The Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment, not to things, but to thoughts. Even modern neuroscience confirms this. The brain is plastic, meaning it can rewire itself. You are not fixed. You are not stuck. You are not the prisoner of your past or your mind. You are something far greater. And when you fully embrace this truth, everything changes. You no longer react to life from a place of fear. You no longer live by the old script that your mind has been playing on repeat. Instead, you move from a place of deep awareness, of presence, of creation. Imagine walking through your day without the constant voice of doubt. Imagine making decisions without being held back by fear. Imagine experiencing life not as a collection of worries, but as a flowing, effortless unfolding. This is not fantasy. It is reality for those who wake up from the illusion of the mind. And now, the choice is yours. Will you continue to listen to the old voice, the voice that keeps you small, the voice that is not really you, or will you step beyond it into the truth of who you really are? You already know the answer, because the moment you stop believing in the mind's illusion, you step into something far greater, the limitless awareness that has been watching all along. This is your true nature. This is your freedom, and it has been here the entire time. Thanks for looking.